I'd now like to introduce our Australian-based panel, and they include three people who come from all parts of the country. We have Anne Hodge from Sydney Hospital and Sydney Eye Hospital from New South Wales. We have Dr. Frank Evans from Central Gippsland in Victoria. And we also have Pip Brennan from Health Consumers Council in Western Australia. So it's an early afternoon for you, Pip, and a mid-afternoon for Frank and Anne. All three of our panellists are passionate about the need for transparent two-way feedback and value the importance of being able to receive and respond to feedback to ensure that it makes a difference. If I can just ask, just quickly, I haven't really gone into too much detail, but there is a fair bit of detail about each of our panel speakers. But Pip, maybe if we could start with you, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm currently the Executive Director of the Health Consumers Council in West Australia. Can you hear me okay, Michael?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Just thought you were looking a bit like you couldn't hear me. So that's my current role. I have been like a grassroots consumer rep for about 21 years. And I have actually done a few different things. I've been an advocate, I've worked in a statutory complaints body, and I've run the Health Consumers Council. And that is why I'm so passionate about the Care Opinion tool.
Thanks, Pip. Anne, could we go to you, please, from Sydney?
Yeah, so I work at Sydney Hospital, Sydney Eye Hospital. I'm the nurse manager for operational nurse support here. Have been for about 10 years now. I was introduced to patient opinion back then in 2016 through Michael's enthusiasm, and I've really appreciated the feedback that we've managed to get through the system.
Thanks, Anne. And last but not least, from Victoria, Frank, could you tell us a little bit about you?
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, I'm the Chief Executive of Central Gippsland Health. We're a small network of public and private not-for-profit hospitals, aged care and community health centres in Gippsland. I think I've been with Care Opinion for a few years now, and I think it's one of the most important things we've done.
Thanks, Frank. We've got some nice questions that have come through from our registrations. But you know, even though we've compiled the questions that registrants have sent us, feel free to go to the question box and ask further questions. We've got people looking at those. But first of all, I'd like to get the ball rolling with a question to you, Pip, if that's okay. So we've summarised the questions. And this one is, the Australian Commission for Safety and Quality in Healthcare recognise the importance of partnering with consumers with the inclusion of Standard 2, which I'm sure you're familiar with. As part of state policy, the Western Australian government has further recognised the need to better engage consumers and recently mandated, or actually it was 4 years ago, I think, mandated Care Opinion as a feedback mechanism for your public health service providers across the state. What difference do you think this has made for Western Australian consumers, and why is state adoption important?
Thanks for the question. I think I alluded in my introduction that I've been sort of involved in a range of different ways. The experience for consumers, when you, as Amelia highlighted, when you put in a complaint through the, or feedback, I should say, through the normal channels, what can often happen is you're going to wait your statutory 30 days and you're going to get a letter that may or may not address what it is that you need. Imagine, though, instead of doing that, you've got an instant, perhaps on your phone while you're still there or while you're in the car after seeing your loved one and expressing your mind, you can tap out a story in your own words, and you know that that's going to get posted and responded to within 72 hours. To me, it's an absolute and utter game changer. I think for me too, the key thing is that you see that cycle of action, from the story being told, story being listened to, story being responded to, and if appropriate, a change is made. transparency is a really important tool for change, and that is what Care Opinion offers. In terms of changes in our state, I'd really like to acknowledge the WA Country Health Service, who adopted the tool prior to it being mandated, and continue, I think, to really use it in a way where other health service providers that we have are still, I guess, still feeling that they're finding their feet. I think it can be difficult many occasions. Lots of different policies and strategies are thrown at health services to say, here, do this, and it can be really hard to actually make that real. So I guess for me, I see us to still be on a journey. We're actually 2 elections in now, and so this latest election, as I understand it, it's still a mandated policy. So I think these things take time to really embed and for people to really see the value.
Yeah, it does take time, Pip, doesn't it? Because I think the birth, the conference today is broader around public online feedback. And I think that's something that was, not only for Western Australia, but others as well, but it was quite new, the concept, wasn't it, for the state?
New and somewhat uncomfortable. It's hard when you're not controlling things, and it's very difficult when you are running a very large service and you've got so many different plates to spin. It can seem to, a little bit unmanageable, but you think about social media where there is no moderation, or this tool where there is moderation by an honest broker. I think it is something that offers something quite unique. As you know, I think I believe the global founder said once, how many stories does it create change? Well, it might just be one.
Yeah. Thanks, Pip. Yes, that's a really good point. I remember that's we've been now going, this is our 10th year. And it's been, I guess, a slow burn, because I think, it is challenging for organisations to get their minds around public online feedback. So, but we'll hear about the British experience, which have been doing it for much longer than us, and it took them time as well. And could I turn to you, thanks. Sydney Hospital, and I look that way because that's you at the bottom of my screen there. Sydney Hospital is reported to be the first official hospital in Australia. I did not know that. Yeah. You recently celebrated your bicentenary. Wow. Being adaptable and looking for opportunities to improve clinical governance, operations and workplace culture are evidently part of Sydney and Sydney Eyes Hospital success. Can you tell us how implementing a public feedback platform has changed your organisation and culture? Because I know it has, because we've shared lots of stories.
Yes.
And the impacts Care Opinion has had internally amongst your staff.
Thank you, Michael. To date, we've got over 480 stories since 2017, and that's a lot of information and feedback we probably would not have had previously. So, the LHD has pledged we will give our patients and the public voice on their experience to drive up quality of care. So, the success of Sydney Hospital has been driven by our LHD leadership. The online platform opens up a choice for patients that has not been there prior. I think it's also opened the transparent conversation with our patients and our staff as well. It encourages our staff to communicate at the point of care, to feel empowered, I suppose, to ask for feedback. In times gone by, feedback meant complaints, or a letter or a card. This online platform, such as Care Opinion, opens up a whole new world for those staff. I think it also leverages the staff to have a perspective on what is better patient experience. I think it's given a voice to compassion and kindness and quality in an age of high-tech care. Because if I look at reflect on the stories through Sydney Hospital, a lot of it is around staff, care, compassion, kindness. That's, mostly that's what all the positive stories are around. The less positive stories would be around process, waiting times, surgical waiting times, OPD waiting times, perhaps a not so clean toilet. But I think it gives a voice to what matters to our patients, especially specifically to our site. We're very specialised. We've got ophthalmology, hand surgery, and general medical. So, you know, things around wayfinding, access, again, waiting times in clinics. It also has helped us encourage staff to be person-centred in their point of care, integrating that into our quality and business plans going forward. It also, we use Care Opinion for quality projects. It's just another perspective of our local consumers. I mean, we do use wider consumers from the Consumer Advisory Committee, but these are our local consumers who know our service, who often with hand and eyes, you have long-term patients, so they know our service well, and it's gold, can we say, to have their feedback. So it also helps us drive improvements throughout the hospital. There might be small ones, like a patient was barged in the toilet. You know, she was elderly. She was highly embarrassed by a staff member who think, you know, staff get a bit complacent because they work in hospitals, so often they forget that there's a person on the other end of the door. So we made a very quick small improvement in 24 hours with a sign on the door about, you know, knocking, listening before you barge through. And I saw a patient in OPD actually do that the other day. So the sign was, you know, actually of use, and we could show that back to the patient that we took that concern, because it was very embarrassing to them, take that on board and make improvements. I think, you know, it's helping us plan and develop long-term improvements for the facility as well. It also helps the staff to understand their responsibility and how they form the patient experience in their day-to-day care. You know, and it also gives other staff accessibility to feedback. You know, for the hotel service staff, they don't get cards, they don't get emails. So when they're mentioned in a Care Opinion story in a positive way, they're really chuffed that, you know, they're part of the team and part of the patient experience. I also believe that leadership, it's promoted wide accessibility to patient experience, from the clinician to the nurse unit manager to the department manager to the, you know, the exec, the CEO. So a wide range of people are seeing our feedback through this platform. We're using our Care Opinion stories in our peak committees as an opening address. The ward-based safety huddles, they'll read a story out, a recent story to staff, whether it's positive or negative, you know, compliment staff. And it's really putting the patient experience up front. You know, it's commitment to building a compassionate workforce. We've also, originally when we introduced, we saw a 30% reduction in complaints on site, but that varies year to year. It's not a consistent change, but it was a really, really, really good start and a really good, you know, positive focus for Care Opinion, and cemented our progress and our continuing association with Care Opinion. And we also, it's a great platform to acknowledge staff broadly. Yet they get acknowledged with the cards in their unit, but that's where they stay. So it's a really a great way of acknowledging staff in a wider community. And you know, we give out our Care Opinion Hero Awards on a regular basis, and they get the staff get presented those at staff meetings or safety huddles, and they get to keep a copy, and then we put a copy on their communication board for the patients and other visitors to see as well. So I think it builds you know, a culture around accepting patient feedback, even asking for it, not hiding away from patient feedback, and yeah, it gives a purpose for person-centred care.
Gee, fantastic. Thanks, Anne. You've made so many points, and I know we've had presentations together, and it sounds like as you've been on the journey of public online feedback, there's new lessons that have emerged throughout the years. Because I think we presented a couple of years ago at a conference, and there's quite a few points made there that were new to me. So thank you very much.
We're learning every day.
Yeah, it's good. It's again, the emphasis being on that two-way dialogue. It's not just about data collection, but about human connection. I want to, that's something very important, and you highlighted that. Frank, great to have you here, mate. From a staff and patient perspective, what value does transparent feedback bring to Central Gippsland, and has this transparency always been there?
Has it always been there? Michael, thanks. I think, and my answer's pretty short, sorry, but
that's okay.
To me, our biggest learning with regard to transparent feedback is what it does in terms of developing a culture of openness in the organisation and transparency. And what I've seen, really seen, is the shift from our tendency towards defensiveness to a much different engagement with people. I've been working in health management for 3 decades. Patient opinion has been the most powerful part of the equation in terms of moving from wanting to defend ourselves around what people are telling us to genuinely starting to listen and acknowledge and do something about it in terms of what it means for individuals and what their experience is. So it's definitely a journey, but I really see a defensive response now. When we started our journey, I did all the responses. I now do virtually none. And I don't. I used to, when I changed from not doing them all, I still wanted to screen them all. I don't screen them. I have a lot of occasions to email members of the staff responding to say thank you so much for the way you've responded. But impact on culture, absolutely huge.
I remember, and I've never forgotten it, where your first story had a significant impact on your organisation. I think you went out and purchased books for your clinical staff, and I forget the title of the book, something about how to improve your communication skills with patients, or I don't remember. Do you remember that?
Dying for a chat.
Dying for a chat, that's right.
So give that book to everyone. That book was recommended to us by our very first respondent, and I noticed Alan Lilly's in the crowd, and Alan was a great friend to us and introduced us. That story launched Care Opinion. That book was really important to the person who told us their really important and sad story. And we still give a book to every single new clinical staff member that comes to our organisation.
Fantastic, Frank. Can I just, while I got you, Frank, ask you another question? Like most of the time, traditional feedback mechanisms mean that formal complaints are provided to a service, reported internally, as Pip said before, and actions undertaken to resolve the specific issue, or which occurs in the confines of the service itself. By engaging with your patients, with Care Opinion, do you have concerns about, given that you're a CEO, about reputational damage due to the transparency of the feedback?
Yeah, I reckon you'd be pretty unique if you didn't get concerned about highly critical feedback. And I'd say to that is, yeah, of course you're concerned, but at the end of the day, what's the most reputationally enhancing thing is actually getting that feedback and responding transparently. Like, I can't tell you how many times our board have congratulated our health service on the way we've responded, as opposed to, and you know, we've had a couple of criticality for recently, Michael, I'll tell everyone that, where you can't get it right all the time, and but our reputation is enhanced by our engagement with the most critical stories, not the other way around.
Yeah, so you turn the negative into a positive by the sounds of it. Because that was my next question is, you know, how do you, what do you have in place to alleviate the risk? And it sounds like you get on the front foot and demonstrate that you're listening and deal with it. And yeah.
Well, I think, you know, you get good stories too.
Well, you've got lots of good stories. Yeah. Over half of the stories are positive.
Yeah, that's right. So, you know, Care Opinion takes care of that for you in a way.
Yeah.
But nothing is important and profound in terms of it creates a culture of that open and honest culture right up through the organisation to the board, where the exec is saying to the board, we don't love this negative feedback, but we are embracing it because it's important and it's making a difference.
And one of the surprising things for me, Frank, I said half of the stories are positive. That's purely positive. I think if we looked at, if there was a positive statement in any story, even if it was a negative story, I think it's about 95% of the stories have a positive element in them, even though it's a crit 4, as you said before, a highly critical story. It'll still have some positive things. It might be, yeah. So I that's what's astounded me, because I think there's a myth out there that when you go online, there'll be a lot of negative things that come your way, but that hasn't seemed to have occurred. Pip, when considering patient engagement online, can you share insights into why consumers would engage with such a platform as opposed to going directly to the health service?
I think I've already outlined, you know, that what can happen with the processes that have been developed around feedback tend to be system focused. They're not consumer focused, they're system focused. And so the result is, for the consumer, it's not a great experience. I think too, one of the things that's really interesting to me.
But hang on, sorry, Pip, hang on. System focused. Why is that? That doesn't mean it needs to be a bad thing, though. Surely the system wants to.
No.
Okay.
Do you know? The other day I saw it was a federal report on COVID recovery, and I did a search on consumer. There were 2 mentions of the word consumer, and one of them was more about a commercial consumer. There was something like 40 something of clinician, and there was more than 200 of service, the health service. I stopped counting after 200. I think from an advocate perspective, when things get too system focused, it loses their humanity. And I think that's what we experience as patients. We become a number. We become a legal problem to be solved rather than a genuine piece of feedback wanting to create change. Certainly in my time working in a statutory complaints body, people usually really were motivated by making sure something never happened to somebody else. They weren't out there to get people or anything like that. They're just looking for change to be made. And I wanted to just pick up too that the other thing that's interesting around the process where you go direct to the service is it's that individual occasion, and you can fix that individual occasion, but you can't then address a systemic problem. I do hear over and over again from West Australian clinicians that it's because it's anonymous, we can't make system changes. And I think it's exactly the opposite. I think it really gives us the opportunity to pull back from that sense when you see there's an individual thing and you want to kind of go in, problem solve, perhaps a little bit of blame, and then fix that thing. But in fact, it sits within a system. As we know, most things are usually system related. When things go wrong, they're usually system related, not down to one clinician. So I think it really helps to kind of break that nexus of it just being one complaint, one letter written 30 days after the event, which usually, as mentioned, doesn't often address consumers' issues.
Yeah, that resonates with me, because I know that when some people write, there's lots of people looking at their story, and when the service responds in a very good way, they know they're not just writing to that storyteller, they're actually writing to the hundreds that are viewing the story. So it can work that way. And
There's that, yeah. And
yeah.
teaching people a bit about, this service is available, just ring up and, people go, oh, great, didn't know that service was there.
There's a bit of education going on as well. And a live, when I say live, a question to you from when you spoke just earlier. If you had a message for other health facilities reluctant to open up feedback publicly, what would that be?
Don't be afraid. Take on the challenge because, as you said, Michael, majority of our stories are positive. Like we've got about 65% are purely positive. And as you said, in each of those critical 1, 2, 3s and even 4s, we haven't had a 5, thank goodness, they're usually complimentary on something. They always give you a positive note to leave on or to start with. So I think that be brave, open up your doors to this sort of feedback because it's invaluable, it's gold. The exec are getting feedback that they would never have ever had if someone wrote it in a letter or were afraid to make a complaint or just felt there was no other there wasn't anything else available for them to give feedback. So, yeah.
And I know across your organisation, it's a large local health district in New South Wales. It's not like you engaged everybody at the same time. It was a gradual sort of uptake of patient opinion and now care opinion across your 5 or 6 hospitals in your district. Why do you think that was the case? Why was it a gradual uptake and not, can you tell us a bit about that?
I think because it was so new as a concept to the LHD. They were well engaged in the traditional forms of letters, emails, surveys and complaints process. I think they needed a pilot site to demonstrate the value of care opinion. As I said, we piloted it from December 2016. And I just think they needed time to, as you said, change needs time, and they needed time to see the benefit of taking on this type of online feedback. I think we can also distribute it to a slow uptake, perhaps resources, consideration of resources, who, where, and budget concerns. As I said, it sounds good, but how does that affect us? And as I said, it's very different from traditional feedback systems and that closed loop system to overcome that cultural barriers around opening up your doors to virtually the world, the good and the bad. And it's challenging to take on change. And again, same as Pip was saying around not knowing the patient details. It's very confronting for staff to be able to say, but I don't know the patient details. I can't fix that particular problem at that time. And rather than looking at a broader themes that are coming across through these stories, that's quite challenging from managers and the traditional complaints patient experience officers. I think different rolling out of strategy and promotion on each site. It's also varies the take up on each site, and just having a champion and someone who's passionate about patient feedback and different types of patient feedback, and opening their doors to share that experience across the sites.
You've just answered a live question from Safer Care Victoria, which was some health services seem to struggle with the anonymity element of care opinion, and how can this be addressed? So I think you've just addressed that one. Thanks, Anne. Well, panel, I can't believe how quick the time goes. We're not going to stay for another hour and talk to you three. It's wonderful. But we're now moving on to our UK British folk are just sort of waking up. It's just getting on to 7 a.m. Can I just thank you so much for your time, for your energy, for, I guess, there's sort of culture change across organisations, but I think it's a good one. Things to be transparent, public and online. And wish you all the best and look forward to connecting again in the very near future. So thank you very much, panel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.
Bye.